I call this special meeting of the Fremont County Board of Commissioners to order. If you please rise and join us for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner McFall?
Present.
Commissioner Bell?
Present.
Commissioner Grantham?
Here.
County Attorney Bellis?
Present.
County Planning and Zoning Director Victoria?
Present.
He's with the county. Okay. Okay, gotcha. All right, move to approval of the agenda. We are going to add number 1 under new business and move the current ones down. Under new business, we're going to add scheduling a public hearing. 6.2.
Mr. Chair, I will move to approve today's agenda with that change. The change item will read, schedule public hearing on November 26, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. Designation of activities of state interest by Fremont County to include site selection and construction of major new domestic water and sewage treatment systems and major extension of existing domestic water and sewage treatment systems, site selection and construction of major facilities of a public utility, and efficient utilization of municipal and industrial water projects, and regulations concerning the same.
That's a mouthful.
It is, and for those who are wondering, these are the infamous 1041 powers that we've talked about here in Fremont County for a while. We finally have a draft ready to go, so we're going to be bringing it to the public.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda with that addition. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Commissioner McFall?
All right.
Motion carries.
All right, we are here today for a public hearing for consideration of adoption of the Fremont County zoning resolution.
Fire ban first.
We are going to first schedule this public hearing that we just added to the agenda, which will be November 26th at 9:30. And again, that is for, I'm not going to reread what Commissioner Bell just read, but it is for the 1041 powers that our attorneys have been diligently working on. We went into a 6-month moratorium 4 or 5 months ago, whatever that was, in order to come up with these regulations, which is per statute. And so we'll be ready to discuss those in a month here. I guess we don't need any action on that because we're just going to do that. We just scheduled that public hearing. Okay? All's well with that?
We did.
Okay. Let's see. Item number 2, which is resolution number 32, is to remove the suspension of the fire ban for Fremont County pursuant to ordinance 2012-1 and imposing a fire ban as provided by ordinance 2012-1. We've contacted by the Sheriff's Department the other day, who is the county fire marshal, and him working with other officials of the BLM, Forest Service, other counties around us. As I've mentioned many times, it's very dry out there. The sheriff has decided that we should go in to fire restrictions, so we will remove the suspension of the fire ban, which will allow the sheriff to move within in the ranges of the fire suspension. And then I believe he's going to start with 1, which is the least restrictive, but give everybody a heads up and be very careful out there. I know Teller County and I believe El Paso County, Park County may be in them as well. So it's dry all over the place. So I would entertain a motion for that.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve resolution number 32, series of 2024. Resolution removing the suspension of the fire ban for Fremont County pursuant to ordinance number 2012-1 and imposing the fire ban as provided in ordinance number 2012-1.
I second with the note, this will take effect immediately upon approval.
Correct. Has been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 32, removing the suspension of the fire ban. The sheriff now has the ability to move within that those restrictions. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Right, thank you. All right, now we will move on to why we're here, and that is consideration of adoption of the Fremont County zoning regulations. This is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing right off the bat, and we will jump into it. I guess we'll start with Mr. Dan Victoria this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. This
Good
is
morning.
a very exciting day, 2 years' worth of work, so it's not terrifying at all. So I'll begin with my staff report, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. So this is for the Fremont County zoning resolution, final draft. Planning and zoning has recognized the need for a review and update to the regulations. Staff has made changes to the Fremont County zoning resolution since its tentative adoption by this commission to include formatting, revised language, new definitions, new uses as a use by right or by special permitting. Additionally, staff has implemented changes based off of suggestions by Plan Tools as part of the affordable / obtainable housing study made part by a DOLA grant received by the county. Planning staff has worked for the last 2 years with input from the public, local professionals, Plan Tools, Planning Commission, Attorney Bellis, Attorney Jackson, and County Commissioner Bell, Grantham, and McFall. So to kick this right off, since the tentative approval, the last version, last time this was all heard, we have made changes to the wording of agricultural building. We have a new definition of backyard poultry and fowl. We have a new definition of dry cleaning services. We revised the definition of farm and ranch hand quarters. For emergency service station, we changed the language in that to make it a non-gender specific profession. Human habitation is a new definition. Property sales office, new definition. We revised the definition of rodeo grounds. We revised the definition of seasonal employee housing. We added a new definition for tiny homes. We have a new definition for tiny home community. We referenced, it's the same language, but we referenced it differently for classification. Trailer or tent camping, we have new language in that one. Backyard poultry, we have a new use. An exemption for animal units, it's new language in addition to the regs. We have home burials in there. We went with, as a result of combining zone districts, residential 2 special review use agricultural sales. That's a new use in a district as a result of the combining of those districts. We had the airport manager review our airport language and make suggestions. We added a new use of solar fields in the industrial zone district by SRU. Tiny homes, that's a new use for us. Accessory dwelling unit, the addition of tiny home, new minimum development requirements, and new access requirement. Home occupation 3, we did a correction to the language, added some uses, and revised what lot size that can go on. Restoration, we have new language. We added tiny home communities to our regulations. That is a completely new use for us. Commercial development plan, we did some clarifying language and a % of growth versus time. And zone change, the criteria is explained. So those are all the changes since the last time you heard it. Please note some items have been reworded, moved, deleted since the tentative approval based off of recommendations by staff, county attorneys, and direction of this board. These items are not detailed within the document. When we're doing our reviews, I think we clicked select all edits, and it kind of made some of the things we made go away disappear. So let's see. So we've been working to find a balance of allowing people to have a greater use of their property while retaining the character of this community. And we've tried to make the regulations as detailed as possible without causing excessive restrictions. So I can certainly jump into anything that you guys would like me to explain further. Those are the highlights, and the ask is the implementation of these regulations, if viewed as favorable, are at the discretion of this board. So it'd be up to you guys when these are in effect.
Right, thanks, Dan. Before we jump into it again, I just want to let you guys know if you have any comments that you'd like to make, feel free to, we will need you to fill out a paper for our records with your name and stuff on it, but then feel free to let us know that you have a comment or something, and then we'll recognize you and you can come up and make those comments.
And there's one thing I did leave off for right now. Planning Commission had some concerns. I had detailed those and had provided those in a separate document to you guys. Yeah, that's where we're at right now.
All right, well, let's just start at the top then.
Yes, sir.
We've got 190 pages here. A lot of them are new, the definitions, which some have been reworked, also the indexes to where things go. I think one thing to point out here, which is pretty exciting, is if you've ever looked at our regulations, they're hard to get through, and it references back to something, then you got to scroll back 59 pages, 100 pages, and then this here is going to have links on it where if it references back to something, you click on that and it goes back to that link. So the format is much better. It's going to be a lot more user-friendly. We've tried to make it where it's easier to use these regulations with, in some cases, less restrictions, and trying to just make it overall better for Fremont County and the people that are trying to use these.
Much more user-friendly, I
Much
think.
more.
And I would be remiss if I didn't at some point, so I'm going to say it right now, thank our staff for all of the work that you guys have done on this. It has been 2 years, and it's been a strenuous 2 years. While you were working on this, you still had to complete day-to-day business as well. And so, Dan, to you and your entire staff, we just would like to say thank you from this board.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't thank my staff enough. This certainly isn't my win. This is the department's win.
All right, let's jump in.
All right. So do you guys want me to go item by item, or just accept public comment and then respond, or?
I think let's highlight where we have, well, kind of what's highlighted in our thing here. Some of the changes in some of these
All right.
zones.
So, let's see, backyard poultry, the city actually allowed for backyard poultry, but in certain zone districts, we did not. So we decided to, in the low-density residential district, people could have chickens or ducks. We took the animal units, we broke that out into an easy-to-read table. We do have an exemption for animal units. So with the extensive amount of farming and ranching we have in this community, we know when people pull animals off of pasture for the winter, sometimes they get a greater number of animal units that would normally be allowed on a parcel. So we have exemptions for when people bring all their stock home to vet or to work on them. We feel that's really important. With home burials there, we refer people to the Fremont County Coroner. They're the ones that issue the permitting and have the regulations for that, so that's not something planning and zoning felt they needed to step in on. Give me 2 seconds, let me scroll. Trying to hit the highlights. Let's see here. So we'll go with tiny home communities. Let me get to that one real quick for you. So tiny homes are something that
Which page are you on?
I will.
Going to 158.
I'll let you know in 1 second here. Give me 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. 158. So on page 158, we discussed tiny home communities. Within the tiny home communities, they're definitely a use that's not going away. They're increasingly becoming more popular. They are more affordable than a conventional structure, so it does work with the affordable housing aspect of things. We developed, with the help of Plan Tools, the design criteria to allow tiny home communities in specific zones. They need, within that, it gives the density that's allowed, parking, setbacks. It's allowed in zone districts, in the same zone districts as you can have a travel trailer parking campground, as they have a similar density impact sort of deal. So this is a very new use for us. It's something we're gonna try out and see how it goes. But in the same locations, you could have a travel trailer parking campground, a tiny home community, with proper permitting can go there. So that's kind of exciting.
So on these tiny homes, I mean, just chime in here, we've been talking about this for like 7 years, 8 years maybe. They became a thing at some point and they were really going, then they kind of slowed down a little bit. However, I think we're seeing that they are more affordable. They are in our building codes that we approved in 2019, I think it was. So they have been in the building codes already. It's just that the zoning regulations did not allow for them.
Yes.
We did drop the square footage at one point to try to accommodate that, but it wasn't quite the same. And I think anybody that wants to live in a 200 square foot home is silly, but I mean, it's at least available for them while keeping it restricted to certain areas. And I noticed that somebody on the planning commission didn't think it was right for Fremont County. It's probably not right for everyone, but I think if someone wants that opportunity, we need to afford that opportunity.
Yeah, and we also changed the ADU regulations to allow a tiny home as an ADU, providing it meets the building department criteria. So we were allowing, an ADU could go down to 250 square feet, which a lot of tiny homes meet that. But when somebody asked us that they could put a tiny home in as an ADU, we'd have to tell them no because it's a tiny home. It didn't really seem to line up.
Right.
So we're trying to work with folks the best we can. So we're pretty excited about that one coming to us. Let me see if I can pick out another one that might be a good highlight.
Well, and I think, I don't know that you mentioned it, but the tiny homes have to be on a foundation as well, just like a regular home does. So it's not like a trailer being pulled in and.
Yeah, and that is absolutely correct. So the building department has criteria of how they need to be affixed. If it's still on wheels, it is an RV. That hasn't changed. But if you could install that per an engineer's recommendations, you have a tiny home and it could be used. It's got a bunch of criteria, but we're developing a pathway, or we've developed a pathway.
I also think this is a perfect example of some of the things, the changes that we've made to be reactionary to what our citizens are asking us for.
Yeah.
Because we have been having this conversation with a lot of folks over the years. And so I think this goes a long way to providing what our citizens are actually asking for.
Absolutely. We get asked about tiny homes very frequently, and the answer has always been, I know the building department allows it, but we do not at this time. And it just they didn't line up.
Nope.
So let's see here. Sorry, I'm just trying to see which would be a good highlight to hit. Let's see, I know through discussion with land use consultants and the board, we have that R3 zone district. I believe we have already addressed that. I figure it's worth bringing up. The minimum acreage for that is going to be 18. So we lowered that just a touch more in order to accommodate for individuals being able to install a roadway in certain circumstances or be able to allow for development. So that R3 zone district has an 18-acre minimum. I think that was a change. I think when we last discussed that was 20 acres. So that's the development requirement for that zone. I'm struggling because I can deep dive into this and beat this to death, or I could hit highlights, and I'm trying to find the balance.
Let me just kind of start this by before we started this, we had 6 agricultural zones.
We did.
You have now combined those 6 into 3. So there's R1, R2, and R3. We took agriculture out of the name. However, agriculture is still in the body, and nothing was taken out. There were actually some things added.
Yes.
But nothing was taken out pertaining to agriculture. I know that was a worry to start with from some people, but things like agritainment were added, and then tiny homes, all those type of things, the uses on those lands. But agriculture itself has not changed, or the uses of agriculture. The acreage in that one that you just talked about is 18 rather than 20. Mm-hmm. So like the top 2 agriculture ones are now 3, the middle 2 are 2, and the bottom 2 are 1, which is the smallest acreages.
Yes, sir.
And so it again, combined 6 into 2, because there were only a few differences in some of those to start with.
Yes, there's very few differences between the zone districts that we paired up. And agriculture, believe it or not, when banks were going to finance, the sheer fact that agricultural is in the name of the zone district We were having people come to us stating that they were having difficulties financing.
I was denied finance because of that myself.
I
because
almost
agriculture
got
was-
denied refinancing because I mistakenly said my shop building was a barn.
Yeah.
So it was creating a struggle for the people of this community, and in the uses, in what's allowed, agriculture is one of the first things listed in those zone districts. That has not gone away. We just took it out of the name to try and relieve a hardship.
Right. So just want that to be clear with anyone that sees this, the millions watching around the world as normal, and those of you in the room, but agriculture did not get pulled, it did not get changed. Very little, if any, got taken out, and it got added to enhance it more than, it gives somebody that had a smaller acreage with the old regulations more ability to do stuff because they're combined with the larger one.
Yes, sir.
And so it gives them more opportunity to do stuff. So it's good all the
It
way
actually
around.
allowed for the larger districts wound up getting reduced setback size and an increase in lot density. So it does allow people to do a little bit more than they previously had.
So on the, well, just a moment. So many different things to look back at.
And it's a balance, right? Like, we've already approved over half of it.
Right.
And so we've already talked about over half of it. So it's, the changes that have made sense are mostly minimal, barring some of the new uses and some of the stuff that was developed.
These are so much easier to read too, I tell you.
It is very easy to
Easier
navigate
figure
now.
out.
Well, it also, it's in plain English language instead of some archaic, I don't even understand what this means.
Yeah, we broke things down. We broke things down into tables to try and make it easy to view. We really try to make it very user-friendly. One thing worth mentioning is we've also already redone all of the applications, so once this is in place, we have a fresh set of applications to go along with it. So that doesn't need to come in front of this board, but that has also already been completed. So we're just waiting to see how this goes.
So while you're looking for whatever you're looking
Yeah,
for,
okay.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Dan, could you just talk about agritainment for a moment? Because this is something that I think has been growing and expounding. It starts on 110. That has been happening in our community for a while, and yet it's something that we've struggled, I would say, a little bit with figuring out exactly how to deal with it, simply because of the impacts that there can be with agritainment on surrounding properties. And so we have a whole new section that talks about this.
Yep, so agritainment has been a big one since I've been working for the county for a pile of years now. There's been people doing this, but we didn't have a use that described what they were doing. So the county tried to make it work the best they could. Agritainment is, I think, wonderful. It creates memories for families, and it's a generational kind of thing. Everyone that comes in for their agritainment permits, the TUPs, which is how we handle it now, they talk about how they did it, and they bring their kids to it, and other kids are bringing to it. I think it's a wonderful thing. That being said, it could be wildly impactful. For some of these folks, 1 month out of the year, they are absolutely flooded with people coming to it, which is fantastic, but the neighbors get to experience all of that as well. So we worked pretty hard on trying to figure out some regulations that allows it. We kind of settled on the smallest, the R1 district, since that is it's got a more of a residential use. On the R1 district, we made that an SRU. We feel with generally where those zone districts are, it's much more impactful. The neighborhoods are much tighter. We felt that that's worth coming in front of this board to have a discussion with and making sure that all the boxes are checked. On the R2 and R3 zone districts, we made an in-office approval. We have all of the different items that you need to submit to our office to make sure that all impacts are being addressed, and then we're able to approve it. But yeah, so it addresses parking, it addresses having insurance, signage, hours, days of the week. We kind of mirrored it off of some of the requirements for temporary use permits. and some of our other permits. But the one distinction is we felt in the smaller the zone district gets, that it should go in front of you guys instead of just a staff review. But that's where we kind of landed with agri-tainment. We're pretty excited for it. We have a lot of people doing it. We had more permits for it this year. So we're going to see how it goes, and hopefully it keeps growing.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's a really exciting thing for Fremont County, and I know there are just different venues popping up all over the county. So I think this is another really great change and addition that you've made.
Well, and I think it's also the opportunity to educate on agriculture. A lot of these folks that have corn mazes or hay rides and that type of stuff, get those people from the cities out, and then they can actually see how a farm kind of works, and hope they use it for that, to their advantage for that.
Yeah, this has been a use I've been very excited about for a while. It's just we didn't have a way to allow it. Well, not that would address all everything that comes with it. So pretty excited about that one.
Maybe touch a little bit on the CDP, Dan, as far as, kind of where we've been on that, the history with, we actually did a moratorium on that portion of the CDP when we're talking about the commercial development plan. And we're talking about the existing uses and the expansion of existing uses, where we considered that a hardship. And then we're, requiring a full CDP just because they want to put a new building on their commercial property.
Yeah.
An additional structure or something like that, or expand the existing structure.
So our current CDP, it required any expansion was to go back through the entire CDP process, any significant change of use. So somebody could have already gone through all of the process, have the same amount of employees, everything, but just have it be significantly different than what the original use was. And technically, by our current regs, they have to come back in front of us and do the entire process over again. It seemed very exhaustive, which is why we placed a moratorium on that. There's been discussion back and forth about the appropriate amount of physical expansion or enlargement of the impervious surface over a percentage of time. And we don't want to prohibit growth by any means, but we want to make sure that while somebody's succeeding, they're not causing harm to their neighbors. So after a lot of discussion, we feel we're going to try the 50% worth of growth within a 2-year time period in certain zone districts. And the folks still have to meet, they still have to show that they meet our requirements, but they don't necessarily have to come in front of this board and submit an entire application to redo all of it. They still have to handle their impacts and just show that they're handling their impacts, but this is a significantly easier process for businesses to have for growth and move forward. So we kind of think this is the sweet spot, and time will tell, and if we have to adjust it, I mean, amendments are going to occur to this document for sure, but we think this is a good starting point.
And I just to pile on that, I mean, what we did here, we went from something that was extremely and overly restrictive.
Yes.
To a moratorium where it was completely unrestrictive, completely unrestricted. And trying to figure out where that was in the meantime as we were getting ready to adopt this new zoning resolution. The 50% in 2 years, I think we originally started off with the smaller percentage and a higher time frame or something like that.
Yeah, I generally tend to have an abundance of caution.
Right. And I think the higher the percentage, all that means is you get more, the ability to change it more over the course of that 2-year period, because some commercial projects just take a little bit longer. But trying to give enough leeway, but still have the ability to come in and say, leeway to the developer or leeway to the business owner, but still have the ability to have some oversight when it comes to like stormwater issues or drainage issues going into neighboring properties. An unrestricted amount of, say, impervious surface. You pave an acre or two of previously unpaved lot, it changes the dynamics for your downhill neighbors. And
Yeah.
that's what we want to make sure that we're able to at least come in at some point in the development process and be able to say, we have to do a drainage plan or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, so our goal is to allow growth and make sure that there's, the impacts are being managed at the same time.
Right.
So, we think this is pretty good.
But back to your point, the changes may come down the road to this because it may not be tenable, but we won't know that until it's tested, really.
And that's the scary part about a brand-new document. We've tried to establish regulations that keep our rural character and not change who we are while also allowing people possibilities.
Right.
And in doing that, we don't want to make it overly restrictive and a burden, but that also may create a loophole, which we will only see with time.
Right.
So,
Right.
we think we've got a great document here. We think we have everything covered, but there will certainly be stuff that pops up.
Right. And we've been talking about that for the last few weeks, off mic at least. We've been talking about, the changes. Not even sure what to anticipate, honestly.
Every day is a new adventure for me.
I'm going to ask, remember, this is a public hearing, if anybody has anything to say now? Yet?
I just go ahead
Sir?
and start.
Is it Landers or Lenders? Landers. If you'll hit the front of that mic, the button on the front, it'll turn that microphone on.
I think it's on.
No, it's
Nope.
not. No,
There
it's
you go.
not.
Now it's on.
Thank you. Again, I'm Martin Landers with Plant Tools. And as Dan mentioned, Plant Tools has been assisting the county with this project that was associated with developing various recommendations regarding amendments to your code specific to housing. And I'm here in support of those code amendments. This was all part of a planning grant that was provided by the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, and that was associated with what was known as HB 211271. And the passage of that particular bill, HB 211271, included a menu of various housing strategies. And those housing strategies were designed to incentivize affordable housing, or even better, remove barriers to housing development, provide a lot of different opportunities for various forms of housing development. We've been in the process of working with county staff to evaluate a number of housing strategies. And as a result of the project and work that we've been doing with staff over the last couple of years now, we've identified 3 housing strategies in particular, and those have to do with ADUs, small square footage dwelling units like tiny homes, and allowing duplexes as a housing option in one of your zoning districts. So with that, again, I support, on behalf of Plan Tools and the project team, the zoning resolution associated with those code amendments. I also think the staff has done an excellent job with the reformatting of this document. That wasn't a part of our work, but it's always good to see a zoning code that's much easier to use. I'm available for any questions that the commission may have. And finally, I'd like to thank Dan and Danielle in particular for all the help and assistance that they provided during the project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay, next item. I don't know.
I'll just go through.
Okay. Dale, you want to tell us what you thinking there? The mic's on. If you'll just state your name, Dale, please.
Hi, good morning. I'm Dale McCullum. For the last couple of years, I've been sitting on the zoning board, listening to the process and working through the process that's before you today. And I just have a couple of observations I'd like to make about the process and the result. in monthly meetings, we would hear applicants come before the zoning board and make their petitions, and we would, and many of them are issues that you've just touched on, you know, the impervious zone, drainage, highway access, and there's a couple of things. I would always try to keep in mind these applications as they were coming before us and how they would be affected by the new zone ordinance that's before you today. And many times these issues were not addressed. They weren't solved. You know, we have these a lot of lots in the county that are non-conforming, and how do we make them? How do we conform? There was one gentleman in Penrose that had a 40-acre parcel that he wanted to develop. He redesigned the project 4 times, I think, and never did get it approved because there were various things that would change. I think what you need to do personally, my advice to you is take a look at these. There's a 200-page bill before you. You need to read it thoroughly. Now, I commend Dan and the work that he's put into it. I truly do. It's been a huge job. But I'm not sure it fully goes as far as the county and the residents need it to go. One thing that came up in the process is that the zoning map hasn't been updated. We're adding new categories in there, like the tiny home affordable housing initiative, and there's nowhere in the county zone the maps to place these things. People are going to come in wanting to build, and where do they put them? It's going to raise a lot of issues. I would highly encourage you to go back and very thoroughly look at all of there are a lot of terms that were redefined in Chapter 1 of this bill, and they need to be discussed, and they need to be, you need to look at the impact of what these definitions mean. I'll give you one example, the SMM definition. We were told on the board that this came directly from the state, that it was mandated that be the definition. Well, I'm sorry, but I just don't, I voiced it in the zoning hearings, and I'll voice it again. I don't think it's right. I think if you look at the definition of that SMM, it's going to raise a whole lot of issues that you want to solve problems, you don't want these people coming before you, it's going to happen. By that definition, the way I read it, if I'm a farmer and I have a shovel in the back of my pickup truck, I need a permit for that because it's defined as equipment. Okay? Now, I realize I'm parsing this to the max, but at the same time, we could have somebody decide down the road that that's what it should mean. And I just don't think that's right. Touching back on the maps again, if I have a piece of property and you redo the map, and if I have an issue with the way the lines are drawn, it's up to me as a citizen to prove my case. Now, in our judicial system, we're innocent until proven guilty. Why should I have to come in before the zoning board and prove that my property was not zoned properly, according to the use that it has been used for historically? That's one issue I think will jump up. You touched on the agricultural definitions and whatever. Right now, the way the county standards read, you know, the barn versus the shop issue, okay, who gets to make that decision? Right now, if you read the standards, the way I read them, it's up to the citizen to decide what the use of that building is, not some inspector that decides to come along 2 or 3 months or 2 years from now. Another issue, I think, is the auxiliary dwelling unit. The way the standards are written right now that they're asking you to approve, the auxiliary dwelling unit is limited in square footage. I think it's 1,200 feet. Is that right, Dan?
Yes, sir, it's going from
Okay, so-
1,000 to 1,200.
So we have ranches out in the county, and people buy these ranches, and they might, they have older homes that are smaller. And what happens if they want to build a new home? Well, guess what? The primary home on that property is the one that's first there. So if you want to build a nicer home, say a 4,000 square foot home, that becomes an auxiliary dwelling unit, and it's not allowed by the code.
I tried to find that one. Can you address that one?
For which, the ADU?
Yeah, where he's saying if you build an ADU first, or there's a house there that's small,
Yep.
it's the primary residence, so you can't build a bigger one because it's too big for an ADU.
So what we've been allowing people to do is, many folks do have a smaller home on their parcel, and they decide they need more square footage, so they want to build a larger home. The first structure on a parcel is the primary. The first home would be the primary home. But if the first home can meet the definition of an ADU, what we do is we have them apply for an ADU. So they have their building permit paperwork for the new larger home. We'll have them submit for an ADU to prove that it can meet those qualifications and that it can be serviced. And then we swap what the designation is. So we can declare that the original home that meets our criteria will now be the ADU, and the new home that they want to build can be built. So we do have a little bit of flexibility in our office to allow for that to occur. And we've actively been doing that right now.
Okay, another topic I'd like to touch on is the affordable housing. For the past couple of years, I've been looking at these projects thinking, okay, the state wants us to try to figure out ways of getting the cost of housing down. Well, one of the big factors in that is the land that it's built on. So that comes back to the subdivision part of it. How do you manage that? A month before we were asked to approve this final version, or the month we were asked to approve this, the tiny housing thing got thrown in. We didn't really have a chance to even look at that as far as the board goes, at least adequately, in my opinion. I think before you can really approve that, you need to know where on that map you're going to place those communities. And,
So I think, just so you know, tiny homes was added to that at our request, because we've had so many.
Oh, I don't doubt
questions
that.
about
I don't
it.
doubt
Yeah,
that a bit.
That's why that was thrown.
I'm
in,
just saying
as
that-
as well as other things that are in this.
I'm just saying that we really didn't have a chance to really, and in fact, I brought that up. I said, well, Dan, where are we going to place these things? I don't see any place on the map that's acceptable for it, the way the map is drawn now.
Yeah, it's not a specific zone district. They don't get their own designated zone district. They become a use by special review in other zone districts that are already established. So they are a use within an established zone district. They're not their own standalone place. So in all of the zone districts that allow for a travel trailer parking campground by SRU, a tiny home community can be applied for by SRU, which will come in front of all of the boards to see if it meets our requirements. So we have here they are in R2, by SRU. They are in R3 by SRU. Hold on. Oop. They can go in rural highway business. And they can go in give me 2 seconds here. and they can go in business. So in all of those districts, it's by special review use. So it's not a use by right. They have to show that they meet the criteria for a special review use and they meet the criteria of that community, and then they have to come in front of all of our boards. So that's how we have it handled. All of the zone districts where they're allowed, again, is the same where somebody could apply for a travel trailer parking campground, buy a special review use, which is the same process. They have very similar densities, very similar designs, so we place them where there already is a very similar use. They're just more of a permanent housing type deal rather than a temporary as you would have in a camper. So they're in there as a use in zone districts we already have.
Okay, well, my final comment is going to be this. I interviewed with the three of you commissioners for the zoning seat that I sit on. One question I was asked, because of my history, my work history, my professional work history, was, do I want to bring California-style stuff that goes on to Fremont County? And I said no. Not just no, but hell no. And I still don't. I just see parts of this bill that I think you really need to look at very carefully and see if it's really what you want in Fremont County. There are parts of it that I don't want, that I don't see as being positive for the growth of the county. And I think you should carefully consider that. I would like you to look at that map. I'd like you to look at that in conjunction with the bill in front of you and thoroughly read it. I think there are some things that are going to jump up and bite you. As far as time goes, the contractors' yards 1 and 2, I see that as being a big pitfall. We have a lot of people in this county that run trucking, small trucking businesses, and I think I've been told that a lot of those guys have home business permits and whatever, and that's great. But I think it's going to bump them into that contractor yard 1 and 2 category, which is going to be a nightmare. And with that, I'd say thank you.
Thanks. Attorney Bellis, will you address the SMM?
Sure, and that's one of those things where that is not a Fremont County definition. So special mobile machinery is defined in Chapter 42 of the revised statutes. The definition that we have in and I know this has come up, this is something that I've looked at because I know it's caused heartburn for at least one member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So Dan has asked me to look at that. The definition that is in our zoning ordinance comes right from the statute. The only thing that's different about our definition from the definition that appears in the Colorado revised statutes is that in the statute, it's broken down into sort of sub-paragraphs, and we've combined it into essentially one run-on sentence. And the language is right out of the statute. So that's not something that we can change because that is a statutory definition. It does not apply to shovels in the back of a truck. It applies to vehicles. It is a definition of a vehicle, and it comes right from the statute. It's something that we have to deal with in our zoning ordinance, but it's not something that we are free to modify because it is, for lack of a better phrase, a term of art that our legislature has defined for us. Special mobile machinery includes vehicles commonly used, and it goes on to talk about what those vehicles are. But it means machinery pulled, hauled, or driven over a highway and is either. And all of that and is either, all of that language comes directly from the statute. It's not something that we can really change. It's just something that we have to deal with.
So we could change it, but we'd have to make it more restrictive. But
Correct.
we have to do at least what they say, and we don't want to make it more restrictive. But it's
Correct.
Colorado Revised Statute 42-1-102, 93.5.
Correct.
And then just to add, the agricultural building, that was per the building department. The building department, when people submit for their building plans, they have, if they want an agricultural building, the building department changed their regulations a few years ago to where you can still do an agricultural building, but you still have to submit plans to them to show that it's safe. And if it meets their requirement of an agricultural building, you could build it free of cost, but you still have to submit plans to them to review. The issue that comes up with that is, in order to get no permit fees and declare it as an agricultural building, if you use it for non-agricultural purposes, technically you're in violation because of what you're storing in there. And now you've modified the use of the structure, and it should have required a permit. So we are having unsafe structures built, or people would report that there's an unpermitted structure in the county. They'd go out there and they say, nope, that's agriculture. Well, it was creating a hardship for the building department, so that's when they decided that you must still submit plans, but you could still have an ag building with no permit fees, providing it's only for agriculture. That's not a zoning thing. We didn't try to make that more restrictive. What we're having is people are claiming it's for their hay and their tractors, and you show up and it's filled with collector's cars. So it's no longer being used for an agricultural purpose, and it was a workaround to get away from permit fees. So the building department made that change, and we're just mirroring. We have their definition for agricultural building. And then for that subdivision that wasn't able to be approved, when we next move on to rewriting the subdivision regulations, that's where we've been taking notes on hardships and revisions that we would see, or that we're experiencing, to explore when we rewrite the subdivision regulations. So the zoning resolution wouldn't have necessarily helped that project, because it's the subdivision regulations that had the restrictions that caused that not to occur. So 2 different documents is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. George?
Hello, guys. George Hall, Crown Point Land Services. I just, following off of this conversation just a minute ago, you were talking about tiny homes and they're all in a special review use process. Does a special review use process have a time frame put on it when it's approved? Or is it forever? I don't remember. I'm asking a question.
It has a time frame. So when it's proposed, if contingencies of the project would have a time frame, SRUs, that is a good one. I know when it comes to phasing, you only have up to 6 years to get all of your phasing started and move forward with that.
My problem is you put a tiny home community in that is basically a permanent type of thing, but if it's only approved under a SRU that has a time frame on it, I see an issue with that.
Is your issue with filling up the lots with the tiny home on it, or the designation and design of the community? Which is your...
Neither. The time frame of a SRU is not forever.
No.
But a tiny home could be sitting on that same piece of property. So you do a tiny home, you sell them tiny homes to somebody, or them people that buy it going to have to come in and redo and revise the SRU 10 years down the road after they've bought it.
George, are you asking, is it an SRU for a tiny home community? Is it for life of use? Is that what you're asking?
Right.
Yes. So we approve SRUs for life of use.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. It was something that was hitting my mind and I didn't know for sure.
It's not a bad question. It just made me think. Yeah, so you could do life of use. The only time an SRU permit is in jeopardy if it's not in violation of the terms how it was approved, or which would then come in front of the board. It's not that the permit just gets yanked. It would come, the department would talk to the folks, the BOCC would talk to the folks in order to get it back to the project design.
It was just something that out of his comments that I was trying to get it straight in my mind. and
Typically,
whatnot.
the language has a time frame to where if every tiny home was removed and the use ceased for a certain
Correct.
duration,
Correct.
then the SRU would go away.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got where you're coming from. I just wanted to make sure, because it was just not clicking in my head real quick. Number one, guys, I really think that you guys have done a lot of work on this. I compliment you on the work you've done on it and whatnot. Me and Dan run into each other in the hallway the other day, and he said something that kind of hit me as being a little bit funny, and yes, it's dealing with your larger zone district and what have you. He was saying that the lots, all of them, had to front on a public way. Is that true? Well, there are several subdivisions in this county that the lots do not front on public ways at this point in time. They are easements, they are private easements, and they are not necessarily on public ways. There are thousands of them type of lots. They are all off of private roadways. They are not off of public ways. For instance, I have one guy that's talking to me right now that has about 120 acres. He's got to go through the BLM for a mile with a approved permit through the BLM to get to his property. He's wanting to put that into 3 35-acre parcels. Well, he doesn't front on a public way. Is that going to be allowed?
As 35-acre tracts or larger are exempt from the subdivision process and are not part
Okay,
of our review,
But
that's
now you can
outside of our
actually
scope.
put them into 18-acre lots, and we go in with that same deal.
Now he's got to comply with our regulations.
Okay, comply with your regulations, but there's no way to get a public right-of-way there.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying, but when you try to make more, then you're subject to more review. But the roadway standards and what's required is part of not this document. That would be our subdivision regulations. So the subdivision regulations would address access and roadways and everything with that, which is a separate document than the one we're discussing today.
Okay, I'm just kind of leery of private easements compared to public ways, and I think there's going to be some crisscrossing going on with that. I wish that there was some sort of a better definition potentially in the definitions part of this, addressing the difference between a public way and private easements.
Concerning subdivisions again, right?
Yeah, I guess you're talking subdivisions.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
as you said, the subdivision is going to be reworked next, so we can tackle that at a later date. It's not pertaining to this.
it may be coming up sooner than you think, because it may come up as soon as you make these regulations, approve these regulations and whatnot, and make them active. It'll probably be coming up rather shortly.
Okay,
That's just something to consider.
thank you.
Thanks, George.
But otherwise, I think you've done a great job on it.
Thank
everything,
you.
guys.
Thank you, sir. George had given us some suggestions earlier after the first batch, and some of those are implemented in these as well, so thanks for your suggestions. Okay, Dan, is there any other one we'd like to tackle, or commissioners?
At this point, I mean, I can keep you here to the end of the workday, or I can answer questions. I'm not trying to deflect, I'm just, I'm happy to answer whatever piques your curiosity. I just, there is a bunch.
Yeah, there is, and I'll tell you, I think it was mentioned earlier by somebody, you ought to read these. I've read them, and some pieces of it I've read twice, some 3 times. Eric and I were talking about one yesterday that I was trying to wrap my head around, but It is pretty intense, I mean, but it's much better than what we currently have, for sure. Because I can actually read these and understand what it's saying and then revert back. So have taken the time to read them. And we do realize that there could possibly things that come out of this that we didn't foresee, even with the many eyes on it, as you mentioned. The nice thing is we do have the ability to make amendments to these. It's not like it's set in stone and that's the way it's got to be. So we want to work through those as we're doing now with the regulations that are currently in place. There's some things that prohibit stuff for no reason, and we work through ways to get those projects to happen. Commissioner Grantham?
I know, I'm struggling with the same thing you guys are as far as, what to talk about exactly, because, I mean, this is something that we've been in the midst of, in the thick of, with you guys, as you're doing all the hard work upstairs, then we get to see the results and talk about these things and sit through the other hearings where we talked about all the changes as we've been moving along. And not struggling with the results, struggling with what do we spend our time. This is valuable time here.
Yes.
Because this is a public hearing, and what do we spend our time talking about? I think the biggest changes we've already addressed as far as the 6 ag districts
To 3.
to 3 residential districts.
Yep.
The keeping as Chairman McFall mentioned, keeping the uses are all there.
Yes.
And the definitions are all in there, and we preserved all those ag uses that are in there. It's just combined districts and renamed them for a more practical reason when it comes to people's ability to finance and other things. One of my biggest concerns was the CDP.
Yes, sir.
And what we did there, and I mean, this is really the end result of over a year of 2 years of, when we first did the moratorium on that section of the CDP.
Yes.
Maybe it has been a couple years now.
It has, yeah.
Okay. Obviously, that was a huge concern of mine, and, finally coming into that, but we've already talked about that, so, there's some of this stuff that is, talking about I's dotted and T's crossed, and how much do we want to actually talk about such things?
And we previously approved the removal of the neighborhood business zone district. We previously removed that one. We only had 2 in the county, and one had a non-conforming and one had an SRU to be doing what they were doing because of it. So we had previously approved that one, so that district is going away, and with the adoption of this, they'll be zoned appropriately. And it actually cleans up those 2 parcels, which is really nice. Trying to think of some other highlights with this much info.
So, real quick on the CDP, going back through the planning commission, and the wording change, using the greater than instead of and deletion of the word growth. That sounds like a really good idea, actually.
Yes.
So have you incorporated that already, or?
I was waiting for feedback.
I think they're spot on that, on the CDP. I don't know if you guys have taken a look at that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think I kind of want to add to that too, that throughout this 2-year roughly period, when issues have been brought up to me, and I know you guys have done the same thing, we went up and talked with Dan and Danielle about these things, and some of them were incorporated before they ever hit the first time and the second time. So I think that's one reason why there's a little bit of a struggle of figuring out what to talk about, and we don't have to talk about it all. Yes, ma'am.
So this is a lot of material. We've already said it's almost 200 pages worth that we're looking at here. We've all seen it in multiple iterations, multiple times. But I also would say that we have a 4-page document full of comments from our planning commission that we haven't really had the opportunity to discuss. I don't have a particular need to get this done quickly. I would like to see that it's done as right as it can be the first time. I think we all agree that we will have changes in this document once it's active and it has a life of its own and it's put to use. I am certain we will find things that don't work as well as we thought they would, and so we will need to revisit those from time to time. But having said that, I would like to see it as right as we can make it the first time out of the gate. And so, Mr. Chair, I actually have a motion if you're prepared to accept a motion.
Not yet. We still have an open public hearing.
All right.
So in just a moment, if there's
When
any
you're
other
ready for me.
comments or suggestions, nothing else?
I do have one other thing.
Okay, George.
And I don't remember what page it's on for sure, but it deals with the drainage plan approval. I believe it's clear back in the back of it. In your document there, it has a location, and this is probably more of a question for your attorney than anything else, but in the approval document, it states that a surveyor can actually say that it is adequate. Can we actually do that as being surveyors because we cannot practice engineering? Can we actually sign that document, or does it honestly just need to be an engineer that does that?
George, are you talking about 10? Oh, sorry, you don't have the document. Danielle, if you can go to page
I believe
188.
it's up on the deal right there,
Yep.
and I can't read it from where I'm
10.04
standing at here.
1B.
It seems like there was another place in there that it allowed for a surveyor to make a statement about it, and maybe it's just on the document that I printed out. I could get my book and look it up, what page it's on. I think it's, keep going down, I think.
The only thing I recall is that the surveyor shall survey the as-built structures. I don't recall anything about the adequacy of that.
Well, and I'm talking out of turn really, maybe.
I don't recall anything requiring a surveyor to engage in any practice beyond surveying. Because if there were such, I would agree that surveyors are not engineers, but I
It's on
recall
page
reading that.
188, yeah.
Yeah, that's all talking about the as-built where the county engineer and surveyor, it's verifying stuff. It doesn't, I don't know where you saw a sign other than you're verifying that
Well,
the
it
pond
says
is
that it's in,
as-built.
constructed in accordance with the design.
Best of my knowledge, is brief.
I'm just asking a question more than anything because I didn't, when I initially read it, I wasn't sure that I felt comfortable with doing that.
So to the extent that if there's something in here that requires you to engage in engineering, I would agree that that is not,
Yeah,
that
I
does
make
not
sure I
work.
don't do that.
And we're not going to ask you to do that. So if we have something that is inartfully worded, that's something worth
So I guess
consideration.
I'm just pointing out the language right there, if
Well,
you
look-
would look at it.
Let-
Everything that I see in this section says engineer or surveyor. That's all I'm finding is engineer or surveyor.
Right.
So it's not specifically assigning anything to
I
a surveyor.
agree. I'm just questioning whether a surveyor really, under their license, can actually affix their seal to something like that. Maybe it comes down to the comfort that the surveyor feels with it.
I would think
too.
so. Don't do anything you don't feel comfortable doing. Yeah.
You get,
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to protect myself here,
Yep.
guys.
Shall state in writing that the pond as-built volume meets the design volume requirements. If you have the volume requirements, can you as a surveyor determine volume?
Yeah,
And there's the answer.
okay. I just wanted to make a clarification more than anything else.
I don't recall anything, George. If you find something, please bring it to our attention. We do not want you practicing
Yeah,
beyond.
I'm not going to do that.
scope
That's
of your
why I was
license.
trying to ask the question. I just don't like signing anything that says engineer or surveyor. I get real hesitant about stuff like that.
As you should. Thank you. Yep.
All right, thanks, George.
Okay, any other, before I close the public hearing? Okay, closing the public hearing. Now I'll entertain a motion.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said, I would rather have this right the first time. I think that we need to workshop one more time, taking a look at the Planning Commission comments. We have those comments as well as staff reactions to the comments, but there's a very lengthy list here, and I think we need to sit down and actually talk about those. We haven't had a chance to do that yet. So, Mr. Chair, I move to table this item until, not our next meeting, which is just a week from today. I don't think that gives us adequate time, so I move to table this to our November 12th, 2024 meeting.
What else do we have on the 12th? Is that our budget presentation too?
It's not currently on the agenda, but I don't see this as going to be a lengthy,
If we workshop it in between.
yeah.
Okay, second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to table the consideration for adoption of the Fremont County zoning resolution to the November 12th meeting. Any further discussion?
Just, I would like to make clear, we are not tabling the public hearing. We are not reopening the public hearing. We are simply tabling a decision to November 12th.
And also for clarity, not only taking into consideration the Planning Commission notes that we have in front of us, but also the comments from our public hearing today.
Yes.
And okay.
Thank you. All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thanks for being here, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you. Now, the next item is to adopt official map of the county zoning map. We want to adopt the map before we adopt the zoning regulations? We don't, so we need to table that one as well. Make a motion to table the adoption of the Fremont County zoning map to the November 12th meeting as well.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to table that to the November 12th meeting as well, the zoning maps. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Motion carries.
What about the fee schedules? We can do those. Yeah, we can do those. So we'll go to item number 3, which is adoption of the fee schedules, Fremont County Planning and Zoning Department. And again, I will turn to Dan Victoria.
All right, so we've been looking at our fees, and we realized that there's items that we're allowed to bill for that don't really apply. There's items that staff puts a pretty decent amount of work into that don't have a fee attached to them. We realized that it really needed us to take a peek at it. So for our proposed fees, if we'll start with marijuana fees, as you can see here, that first column is the current fees, second is the proposed, and the third is the difference. So you'll see that we deleted the change of corporation or LL structure, the change of trade name, and the license fee for a change of location, mostly because those issues are handled through a different process.
Also transfer of ownership.
Oh, yes, ma'am, thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry, it's hiding on the bottom.
Yes.
So, yes, so mostly those are handled through a different type of permitting that we already do. So we have those. We did add a little bit of money to the caregiver and the modification of premise, which includes a hearing. So we did those to try and cover the staff time and the amount of work that's involved with handling those applications. So deleted 4 things, increased the fee on 3. Any questions? Or wait till the end?
Thanks.
All right, so here is what we use most often, our zoning fees. So in that third column is the difference in fees. The red is a reduction, the green is an increase, and the blue is a new fee, which handles new uses. So we went through a bunch of these. As you can see, we've deleted, let's see here, 2 uses, 3 uses, 4 uses. We've deleted 4 uses, we've increased a few fees, we've lowered a few fees. Most of what we're doing here, or not most, all of what we're doing here is to reflect the uses that we're gonna have in place and to cover the staff time, so that way, when an individual brings a project to us, it's not taxpayer dollars paying for our salaries to review it. We just want people to cover their time. So we've moved some stuff around on this one, and then this last deal is the subdivision fees. And again, that third column, you could see some minor increases, 2 reductions, and everything else stays the same. So that is my informed presentation on this.
Okay, questions, comments?
Just a comment, I would say, typically, if a government entity says, here's our new fee schedule, everything's going to be red because everything's going to go up. And it's not.
No.
It looks to me as though in as many instances that something is increasing, we have completely removed or reduced as well. And so I think overall, this would be a really good thing for the residents of Fremont County and those who are choosing to do business here.
We tried to do a very fair assessment of our time and what it takes for us to work through the paperwork. I have a pretty hard stance of, I love that you want to do something, but I think you should pay for what it takes to do your thing and not put your burden onto, or put your gain onto others. So my goal is trying to be as fair as possible.
Absolutely.
So some of these, when you look at the difference in fees column, some go from, like, say, 250 down to 0. Others are, says delete. What's the difference between going to 0 and delete over on the far right side?
So say we're looking at the zoning proposed fees, to pick a page, so I can reference something specifically.
Like the CUP renewal. It goes from 1550 to 0, and the difference in fees says delete, and some of the others say 0 when it goes. I guess I'm trying to, 0 is no change.
The
Got it.
difference in fees, that third column is the
Dirt.
difference.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking it was going to 0. I was reading the, never mind.
Okay.
Exactly what I was thought. Good answer. Exactly what I thought. Good answer.
I was trying to figure out what you were actually seeing.
This is a test.
This is a test, yes.
Okay.
Kevin failed miserably, but it was a test.
Don't worry, nobody's watching.
Just the millions.
Only the millions.
Millions around the world.
But yeah, so we looked at uses that that don't make sense, that we don't bill for. We obviously made those go away. There's no sense to continue having those. And again, it's just trying to figure out what was fair.
I do
Okay.
have, I'm sorry.
Another comment.
I do have a
Yeah.
question. I'm not sure if this is for Dan or maybe for our county attorney. Timeframe for approval of adoption. Do we need to, should we give the public some notification that this is changing and perhaps adopt into the future, even if it's November 1st, as opposed to immediate adoption?
That is a great question for somebody sitting next to me.
I don't think it is
Microphone,
I
sir.
don't think it is
Microphone,
necessary.
microphone.
Thank you. I don't believe it is necessary, but it certainly makes sense to give folks notice that on a date in the future, the fees will change,
Okay,
even though it's not necessary.
thank you.
Have a flood of applications on October 31st.
Well, let's hope so.
Unless there's any other comments, concerns, I would entertain a motion.
So I guess before we do a motion, let's just discuss how far out we might want to do that. We thinking January 1st, November 1st?
December 1st, maybe, kind of in between there. I don't think November 1st really gives opportunity for anyone to do anything if they're looking. But I do think that as of December 1st, then that would make a difference and give them more time if that's what they're choosing to do.
Not fine. I was just curious what you were thinking since you brought it up.
That's my thought, but it's not necessarily the appropriate one.
Well, and I didn't know if there's any logic one way or the other for P and Z.
I mean, we have our fees now that help cover stuff. So we certainly will continue functioning as usual. There's no urgency for us, but as we're redoing everything else, we figured this was a good time.
Okay. Well, then I move that we approve the adoption of the fee schedule for the Fremont County Planning and Zoning Department effective December 1st of 2024.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the new fee schedule effective December 1st, 2024. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Grantham?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Commissioner McFall?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. With no more business before us, we are adjourned.